just keep buying RV after RV and mobile home after mobile home. I mean, these people, I mean, that's what we all pay our taxes for. Get up there and help these people. But I have people all through the week like, it's still really, yes, they are still dragging bodies out. Yes, they are still needing fresh teams of cadaver dogs. Yes. Don't forget these people.
Not too bad, Mr.
It's
Joe.
not over.
I've got to go through it, and I'm going to this week.
So let me also back to reset.
Okay.
And I mean, it's clean. I'm never going to use it. So, I mean, I would love to
Find
have.
places for that. Good help, because these people got
Hey, Miss Jerry.
that wonderful
Are you
lady we
shrinking?
met, Jewel, who had that storefront that just now is a charity, complete charity mission. And was last time I was talking to her, last Saturday. And she was talking about, I started thinking when these people, they get an arm or maybe a home or something, they still gotta have a microwave. They don't have an iron and an iron board. I mean, everything.
Yeah.
Yes.
She's around here somewhere.
Yeah, this is my wife, Jen. Yep, let's go ahead and start.
Joe, you all right?
Good, how about you?
Just want to speak.
Well, it's good to see you guys again.
How you doing?
We're all right.
How's your week?
Busy. I'm John Turner. It's good to meet you. Good to see you guys.
No, there's a guy and a gal.
Guys and the holistic.
Pleasure teaching your kids.
You guys take it easy on old Cedric. My name's Tony.
Okay.
Yeah, how you doing? Thank you. Morning, Ron. Good to see you, sir.
Not 22 years ago. How many years have you?
Good morning and welcome to Bible study. It's good to have everybody in the building and appreciate all our friends and brethren who join us from home and anybody who might be joining us in the church parking lot. We'd like to invite everybody to open their Bibles to Ecclesiastes chapter 11 as we continue to study Solomon's great book on searching for the meaning of life. Searching for the meaning of life. And before we begin, we're going to ask Brother Mark Hill to their minds in a word of prayer. Excuse me, we're going to ask Brother Joseph to lead us on a word of prayer.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day which you've allowed us all to come together to study out of your word and have a better understanding of what you'd have us to do. We ask that as we go throughout this Bible study that our teacher has a ready collection of his notes and all those that are present have the opportunity and the will to lean into what we're studying and open our minds and try to be better Christians and servants of you. I ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, Ecclesiastes chapter 11 and chapter 12 were Solomon's winding up his journal. He went on an excursion on looking for the meaning of life. What if you look for the meaning of life by leaving God out of the picture? So he looked at life under the sun. He did all of his experiments with riches and building projects and servants and pleasures and things like that. And as he says at the beginning, that he tells you the end of the book, at the beginning of the book, he says all is vanity. And there, I think in one of those first verses, he uses the word vanity like 5 times. And so now he's pointing us in the direction of life under the sun with God. And he's given us reasons to have a positive attitude in life under the sun with God. Even though there's a lot of negative things that happen in this world. We've talked about inequity, we talk about just unfairness. You have the bad man that does bad things. He lives a long, prosperous life. You got the good man who follows God and he has difficulties in life. There's unfairness, in life that happens. And it seems like he focuses his attention in chapter 11 and chapter 12 about enjoy life, have a positive attitude, life that God has given us and breath to breathe. God gave us life. God created us. He created this world for us to live in. So life under the sun with God, he's telling us to enjoy life. And a lot of times we can get in a rut. It's hard to get out of ruts. Whenever I was a child, we'd go to my grandparents' house. I knew that we were on his road to hit my grandfather's house because you got in the ruts. You kind of felt the car settle in, and it took you on down the dirt road to grandpa's house, and at the end of the road was getting to see our grandparents. But when you get in ruts in life, it's hard to get out of ruts. So he's kind of blasting our thinking with some positive things that we can have and attitudes. Just real quickly, a way to review having a positive attitude. First, we saw that we should live offensively. I hope I'm saying that right and spelled it right this time. I didn't hope it's spelled right. Instead of just going through life defensively, take a risk. Should I go to college as a young person? Should I start that garden this year? Should I try that new hobby that I want to do in my home or somewhere else? Want to try something new? Go ahead. To take that risk in life. Just don't stay in the rut of always playing it safe. Try something new. We talked about that. Instead of hoarding, try giving. We talked about the idea of it's better to give than to receive. We have blessings from God. We share our blessings from God. We bless those who receive those blessings. It's better to give than to receive. You change who you are by being a giver and not a hoarder. And I know somebody who's a hoarder. Love that person very dearly. They live a very enclosed, limited life. It's a sad life. But those who give, and sometimes give till it hurts. Maybe we gave too much, and we kind of have to tighten things this month. That's a better life to live. And 2 Corinthians chapter 9 teaches us about giving, but it also teaches us about God providing for us. And we are on God's team. Try giving and not hoarding. This is where we left off last week.
Luther, real quick.
Yes, sir.
You just saying that, it made me think. You said God gives it to us. If God freely gives it, what makes us think we need to freely hold on to it?
That's exactly right.
We can't. We can't take care of the world's problems, the homeless, those that go without food and everything. But it is our objective to try to do what we can with what we have.
That's right.
And yeah, sometimes we may go a little bit overboard, but it'll always wash out in the end.
That's right. And actually, there's a principle. I'll back up a chart. There's a principle taught like that in 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 6 through 8. This isn't health and wealth doctrine. This is a reality. This is a spiritual reality. God blesses us. We use our possessions to take care of ourselves and also to bless other people. We thank God for, y'all probably going to go to lunch today. What are you going to do? You're going to bow your heads and say what? You're going to tell God that you just got all this meal by yourself? No, you thank your God for your food. We have God in our life, and it's not that health and wealth doctrine stuff, but it is our dependency upon God that He provides one way or the other. But you're right. I'd be afraid to just always fall into that rut of selfishness, a fear of giving, and that could become a form of hoarding, and not. That's the word I want to use. Keeping God's blessings being cycled and used else places. Michael?
Well, to that point, and we kind of touched on it last week about, the parables of giving and whatnot, but I always go back to Matthew chapter 25 when it talks about
Yes,
the
sir.
final judgment.
Yeah.
And everything that Jesus says to do, hey, you're coming into my kingdom, it's all, you gave me this, you did this to me, you did this
Yes.
for me. It's all an act of giving. It's
Yes.
all the mindset of wanting to give. And those are the individuals that are going to make it to the kingdom of heaven.
Yes.
And that's the mindset we have to have. And it's coming straight out of our Savior's mouth. The Savior's telling us how He's saving us.
Yes.
And what we need to do.
He's telling us that. He's telling us that the last week of his life. He's telling us that like 48 hours or 72 hours before he goes to the cross. I mean, he was serious.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that passage because it also talks about being giving, and not just giving of money, but giving of time. You visited me in prison. I was sick and you visited me. But he also says, when you did it to one of these, my brethren, and we might, take that as just being brethren in the church. I take it to be our neighbor.
Right.
And that gives me a goal, but also gives me a fearful goal. That'll make sure I'm doing that. And we've seen we've seen a lot of Christians and non-Christians pouring themselves out to help people, like in Eastern Tennessee and Western North Carolina. If you want to reinforce your faith in humanity, go watch some of those videos of what people are doing up there. And I don't know what their faith is. I don't know if they have a faith. Well, I know what. They're a man and woman made in God's image, and they're out here helping their neighbor. And but going back to what Michael's point is, being part of the kingdom is that we are givers. We are helpers. And when you finally get out of the rut and you do it for Jesus, it's a whole different life. It's a whole different life. And so, good comment, good point. I like that passage in
Before you
Matthew
move
25.
past that, I'd like to say it is a big difference. I've done storm and hurricane disaster relief work before because the corporation I worked for was contracted
That's right,
to go to
yeah.
the Gulf Coast and do that. Was it rewarding? Yeah, it was rewarding, but I was getting paid. What we've been able to do through the generosity of many individuals, some we know and many we don't,
Right.
has fired me up and filled me more than everything I did on a grander
Right.
scale with more money and more resources for other things because the motivation is completely different.
Yes. Yes.
That's a key point.
Motivation is Jesus.
Absolutely.
Very good point. Very good point. Somebody else had their hand up over back here, over here.
I was thinking in reference to what Mike said about Matthew 25,
Yes.
is in the latter part of the chapter, it talks about when you're given to do these things under
Yes.
one of mine, it's the same as doing for Christ. And I think of that so many times when I do something for someone,
Yes.
or when I think I should, because it's like doing for Christ, because that's the only way we can do anything in return for His love and what He's done for us.
It is. It is. The worldview of life under the sun when you serve God above the sun. That's it. It's a whole different life. It's a whole different way of living. It's a better worldview. Sometimes we can live our lives as Christians and unknowingly wean ourselves away from knowing we're always serving God, and we get in the rut of this world. That happened in the parable of the sower. To go along with the chapter Michael mentioned too, is you remember the parable of talents. The one man was fearful to take a risk. So he went and buried it, didn't even invest it with the bankers. Well, his master had some pretty harsh words for him. You wicked and lazy servant. And that's talking about us in this lifetime. And so Jesus is very, he could say things that were very edgy and radical, but when you grasp them, they really they help us have the meaning of life. And Matthew 25 gives us a meaning of life. Try giving. It's a whole lot better lifestyle. It really is. So step out, take a risk. You have one life to live. Leave this life being a giver. Instead of watching, doing. Chapter 11, verses 3 and 4. Positive attitudes to have in life. If the clouds are full of rain, they empty themselves upon the earth. If the tree falls to the south or the north, In the place where the tree falls, there it shall lay. He who observes the wind will not sow, and he who regards the clouds will not reap. I like the second illustration he uses in this parable, in this proverb. We had a storm came through several years ago, and Tanya has a picture of me standing in my backyard. 5 large trees fell. It looked comical. And on Facebook, I said I prayed for firewood, and God sent me 5 trees. and then I look out there later, and Tony and Jill's out there with chainsaws, and another brother's out there with a chainsaw cutting all that up. One big tree, it was as big as these chairs. You just kind of take the whole chair row.
It
and
was
it'd be
about
from,
3.5 foot in diameter, if I remember
oh
correctly.
yeah, from here to here. And I thought, well, one, there's no cutting that thing up. It still lays there today. And I don't remember if it fell to the north or the south. Nobody's moved it in another direction. It's a truism. I mean, it's a truth in life. Clouds get full, they dump rain. If tree falls, it lays there. What's the point when you get to verse 4? What's the point where it says, he who observes the wind will not sow, or he who regards the clouds will not reap? Should a farmer kind of look at the winds and look at the sky? And what is this teaching?
If you become too obsessed with looking at negative circumstances around you, it'll stymie you from doing anything.
Exactly it. He nailed it. He's talking about over worrying or over calculating, and you don't do anything. Go ahead.
So, I know we've talked a whole lot about the hurricane, but this brings something that happened to me to my mind really deeply. So, whenever we were first out in it, like we were out responding to
That's
stuff
right.
whenever all of that happened, and there was a lot of talk about how the trees were falling all around us and the rain was so heavy you couldn't see. But at one point, we were even thinking, hey, we're out in this and we don't need to be, because we were putting ourselves at risk. But we continued to work and continued to help the people that needed to be helped whenever we were putting ourselves at risk. And when we got back later on, we started making comments about how the only thing that kept us alive was God.
Yes, sir.
During that time, we went back later on, and there was places that we were parked that had oak trees the size you're talking about laying right where we were parked.
Right.
So we didn't look towards what the bad was going on. We looked towards what we knew we needed to do, give what we could give, like we were talking about earlier. And I think that's what this is talking about to me.
Oh, it definitely. Can you imagine the little firehouse that all the men stayed in it through the hurricane, didn't get out because it might get wet or a tree might fall on their truck, and all this disaster happens around them, and then they just go home? What was accomplished? Now, what he's talking about, excellent illustration, by the way. I mean, you got your trees, you got your rain, and all what you went through right there in that verse. What he's talking about is your life. He's talking about my life, your life. One thing that Tanya will say, "Are you going to cut grass today?" Well, let me go outside and see if it's going to rain. And there's times that I'm glad I didn't cut grass. There's more times I wish I went ahead and cut grass because it didn't rain. And what he's saying is some people go through life finding reasons not to live life, finding reasons not to do. And you've known some people like that. I mean, actually, we've all done it a little bit at some time. But some people just won't go do anything because they can find 10 reasons not to go do anything. They go through life not doing anything. And Solomon is saying, live your life under the sun. Enjoy your life under the sun. Of course, do this while you're serving God. Here he's saying, don't just sit around and watch life fly by. Go and do. One motto I kind of have in life, I'd rather try and fail and enjoy failing than never try. And, you know, and he's saying, don't just sit around and watch and make reasons not to go do.
To kind of go with what John said, I think the first part I kind of got a little something out of in verse was it verse 3? Yeah, verse 3. If the clouds be full of rain, they will empty themselves upon the earth, and if the tree falls toward the south or towards the north, and the place where the tree falls, there it shall be. For me, that just tells me it is what it is. And then, like John said, if you try to adjust what you plan to do by the wind or the rain, you're going to stymie
Everything that can
yourself.
happen, yeah.
It is what it is. Just do. If you got something to do, do it.
Yeah.
And if you can't do it outside, trust me. Ask my wife. There's plenty to do inside.
That's right, that's right. That's the point. Try living life doing. Turn over to Galatians 6. We always read these verses, but sometimes when you read them together, you capture a little bit fuller meaning. I'm going to put the question on the screen. What motivates you to take action? Now, you may have some answers you want to share. You may have your own little pet motivator you want to share with the class. We all have a motivation, and sometimes you got to find your motivation. Well, here is a spiritual truism in the world. But I'll begin in verse 7. You actually go back to verse 6. That kind of ties into what Michael said a little bit. Let's go back. Let's just begin at verse 7. He says, "Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. Whatever a man sows, he also will reap." He talks about sowing and reaping in this verse. "For he who sows to the flesh, will the flesh reap corruption. He who sows to the Spirit, will the Spirit reap everlasting life." And notice that word "and" there.
Also.
Pardon?
Also?
Also, you have a word "also" in your translation?
No, I have and, but.
Yeah. And I didn't double check before I came to class. I think it's a coordinating conjunction.
Ooh.
Am I getting that right?
I think you are.
I may sound smarter than I really am. It connects. And let us not grow weary while doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart. See how that's connected to verse 7 and 8? The spiritual law that God has in our spiritual world that we live in. Therefore, there's that continuing, and that's the conclusion to the idea. As we have opportunity, let us do good to all, especially those of the household of faith. I like how he says in verse 9, let us not grow weary while doing good. Do. Because you reap what you sow in life if you do. That's the connection I want to make with this verse. So, anybody have any motivators for your life that you want to share? What motivates you to go do things?
My wife, she cracks the whip.
Okay, but there's a truth there. Now we're gonna sit here and bare our souls, have therapy
Well,
class.
she's not here.
Yeah,
So
you're
I
pretty
can-
brave right now.
I go with discipline. I mean, not, everybody's
There you go.
raised differently.
Right.
How they grow and are nurtured. But if you stay disciplined, if you can be disciplined.
Yes.
You get into a habit of doing
Yes.
what's needing to be done. And a lot of times you can't just sit there and say, well, that laundry's gonna get done by itself one of these days.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen that way.
If only.
If only.
So sometimes it's necessity.
Necessity.
Yeah.
Okay, so
We put it off
so
until we
wife,
have to do it.
routine, necessity. Yeah. I kind of start my day. What has to be done, and that's my to-do list. You find things that motivate you. Helping people can be a motivation. Doing it because of Jesus is a motivation. Doing it because of love. Doing it because you enjoy doing it. So, we've all had to deal with maybe being in a rut in our life now and then, and it's really sad to see somebody stuck in a deep rut. And deep ruts can become dark places. And you got to help pull people out of the rut by finding what motivates them, or else they become like that tree that falls and just stays in its place and doesn't do anything. Fourth word of wisdom. Go ahead.
I was going to say opportunity
Yes.
motivates me. If I see an opportunity to do something, then I'll be more likely to.
Yeah, you want to jump to it. You
Yeah.
want you have joy in taking care of them of that opportunity, and he actually talks about that in Galatians as we have opportunity. That can be a good motivator. Didn't think about that.
You know, with that being said, there's something that just dawned on me, that when you see an opportunity, I seem to get more joy or more out of taking care of somebody, because all of a sudden here's this opportunity and it's a
Yes.
spontaneous take care of it.
Yes.
That I mean, I still get joy out of the ones where I do what I plan to do
Right.
to take care of it. So I mean, I don't know if that
That
makes
goes
sense.
with it. Opportunity, the joy you get from the opportunity. That's you're finding your motivation. You ever find somebody who's not motivated? I'm not saying they're just lazy. I'm just saying they're in a rut. Maybe it's depression or something. People go through depression. The averages are every person will go through 3 bouts of depression within their lifetime. I think it's the same average for car wrecks. Everybody's going to have an average of 3 car wrecks in their lifetime. And so, yeah, if you're older in life, you haven't had that car wreck yet, I mean, you got 3 coming up. You gotta be careful. But you know, if somebody goes through depression, you don't need to beat them up. You need to help pull them up. Mark?
Yeah, there's a book out that talks about every day try to do 1% better.
I like
Yeah.
that.
Oh.
I like
And
that.
the idea behind that is that you're not overextending yourself.
Yes.
Because some people, they want to make a change in their life and they want to do a drastic change.
Right.
But if you, and this is the same way with the Bible, I mean, our spiritual life is
One
just
step.
try to do 1% better than you did the day before.
Yeah. And you end up sowing what you reap, and that has that snowball cumulative effect instead of trying to do the snowball all at one time. That way it kind of sets you up for disappointment. Very good point. I like that 1%.
Our main motive for doing things that need to be done is that it pleases God.
Yes. Yes.
Because that's the way God is.
Yes.
God just don't sit around and do nothing.
No, he doesn't. You know, God worked. God still works. And you know, so when your worldview is God, while we live under the sun, God becomes our ultimate motivation for what we want to do, and that's a good life. That's a good life. Following our shepherd, that's a good life.
To me, though, there's also a balance with all of it. I mean, you've got the 2 Thessalonians, if a man does not work, he does not eat, right?
Right.
But you also have to remember the other side of that. If you're sowing and reaping, if you reap what you sow, you also have to be careful not to overwork yourself as well.
Right.
And I'm just throwing this in as a caveat. I mean,
Is this confession or okay? You're saying out loud. Okay.
but whenever you do reap what you sow, yes, you've got to work. Yes, you've got to continue going, but you've also got to enjoy the life as well.
Yeah.
You have to take the time to reap what you're sowing.
Yeah. You do, and what he's telling us here is to enjoy life that God's given us under the sun. Have a positive attitude toward life under the sun. But you know, you have to have balance. Yeah, and sometimes you got to learn to balance. Number 4, instead of doubting, try trusting. Go to verses 5 and 6. As you do not know what is the way of the wind, or how the bones grow in the womb of her who is with child, so you do not know the works of God who makes all things. In the morning sow your seed. In the evening do not withhold your hand, for you do not know which will prosper, either this or that, or whether both alike will be good. What's he teaching us? So you don't know the way of the wind. You know, sometimes when I have to spray my yard, I'll look real sophisticated. I'll bend down to get some grass, hold it up, and drop it, see which way. You know, my neighbor probably thinks, you know, this guy's really smart over there. And a lot of times the grass just falls back to the ground. But sometimes it blows this way, so I know I need to if I'm going to spray my grass, I need to, you know, spray upwind. But then you do it again, and the wind blows it this way. That's when you do the other passage. You go back to the house and don't do anything. You don't know which way the wind. You don't always know about the wind. And the whole, the whole beginning of life in this verse, we don't know that. But you know who knows the when? You know who knows us as we're formed in our mother's womb? It's God. So he talks about, so you not know the works of God who makes all things. And it's almost like a little bit of a therefore in verse 6. In the morning sow your seed. In the evening sow your seed. Because you don't know which one will prosper, either this or that, or maybe they both will. What's he telling us in this verse?
Just do it, don't worry about it.
Just do it, don't worry about it? Okay. What else? Kind of like the previous verse. Just don't go around doubting.
God's in control.
He inserts God in here is what I think we got to get our minds around. And maybe we can understand the God part to a degree. The other part we just accept by faith. No, there's part of faith. Part of faith is trusting. And the reason we have that trust is there's some things we don't know. And so he says, so you do not know the works of God who makes everything. Of course, he's telling us to be industrious. Sow in the morning, sow in the evening. You don't know which one is going to be prosperous. You don't know which one maybe God will bless you in. The way God has ordered the universe and, our world, you don't know which ones might work better. Do it. Try trusting in what you're doing instead of doubting and not doing anything.
At the end, it's a connect back to verses 3 and 4.
It does.
3 and 4, you know the wind, it's going. You can tell when it's going to rain. You can tell when it's going to be windy, and there's meteorologists now that actually do study the weather and kind of know what it's going to be.
Right.
And then this is saying there are also things that you will not know, that you do not know, and you will never know, but you still have to keep going. You still have to keep doing, no matter if you do know it and you can do something differently, or if you don't know it, there's no difference. You still have to do.
You're right. And the point being is go ahead and do.
Yeah.
Again, but in this verse, to go on what you said, if you go around doubting everything, sometimes you need to step out and trust. And it kind of goes along, it does go along with the previous verse we just saw. Okay?
There's a verse, I don't know where it is, but it says, whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your heart.
You're getting ahead of me, Ed.
Uh-oh.
That's right. Go back, chapter 9, verse 10, one of my favorite Bible verses. We're going to read that here in a moment. I've saved it for another one, but actually it fits here, doesn't it? The whole point is, Solomon just has a way of showing you the reality of life, kind of the positive with the negative. Verse 10 of chapter 9, whatever your hands find to do, do it with your might. Live your life to the might, your might. What is that Nike symbol thing? Just do it. And it's kind of what he's saying here. Because you're going to die one day. That's how it sums up. Life under the sun is life and death. And while you have life, whatever your hands find to do, do it with your might, because there's going to come a time you're not going to be able to do that. I mean, verse 9 is very motivating. It's also, somebody might see it being dark. I don't think it's dark. I think it's just reality. It's reality. So the idea of doubting and trusting, go over to Matthew chapter 14, I believe. Yeah, chapter 14. You know the passage. It's when Peter decided to walk on water. Come over to Matthew chapter 14, verse 31. And we're going to ask the question, why are faith and doubt opposites? We'll read the passage and we'll answer the question. So, Jesus makes the disciples get in a boat and go out on the water. Jesus knows the storm is going to come. Jesus knows he's going to walk out there on the water for them to see him. He knows he's going to still the storm. He does all this to test and grow their faith. They're in an apostle training camp still. So he does this to grow their faith. But Peter has enough faith to get out of the boat. He's the only one that had enough faith to get out of the boat. But then he sees the storms and gets doubtful and fears and says, Lord, save me. And you can just hear their forearms grasp each other. The hands meet. I always wonder, how far down did Peter sink? I mean, was he down to his waist? Was he up to his neck? Then Jesus grabbed him. And it says in verse 31, immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him and said, O you of little faith, why did you doubt? I do not believe Jesus is chastising Peter. I believe Jesus is teaching Peter. Why is faith and doubt opposites? Why is faith and doubt opposites?
Faith is stronger than doubt,
Yes.
for sure.
Yes.
If you have faith in something, you're gonna give it your all. You're gonna stand firm for that.
Yes.
Doubt, things are, iffy. So that's not very substantial. So you've gotta have faith in what you believe in.
Okay. Why is faith, this is for the whole class, why is faith greater than doubt? When faith is within you, think about what you have your faith in. Why is faith greater than doubt?
Strengthens.
It strengthens. What's the power behind your faith? Mike?
Well, faith produces hope,
Yes.
and doubt produces despair.
Yes.
And so it's good that we have faith instead of having doubt.
Yes. Living life with faith. Jesus was right there. We are so much like Peter. Jesus was right there. Jesus is nearby. He doesn't understand everything about Jesus yet. He has enough faith to be following Jesus. But storms came, he doubts, he sinks. But Jesus is right there. And Jesus is teaching him. You get so many lessons out of this verse. Faith produces hope. To his credit, he cried out to the Lord, probably with hope. But Jesus teaching him the lesson, you had faith to walk on water, but when you started doubting, when you had some problems, you started to sink. Doubt pulls us down. Doubt sinks us. Faith lifts us up. Tony?
I kind of see faith and trust being almost synonymous. Whereas doubt and
Yes.
faith are polar opposites.
Yes.
When we have faith, we have trust in something beyond our comprehension. And when we have doubt, we don't have that trust anymore.
Right. So how is this verse lifting our minds and eyes and hearts above the sun? Joe?
Faith is, it puts your belief into action. It puts works
Very,
into
very well
action.
said. Yes, sir.
And doubt stops all of your works
Yes.
and all of your.
Yes. You have to live by trusting. Look at relationships. Look at marriage. Look at raising children. Look at work. Look at friendships. Look at our relationship with God. You move through life by trusting and having faith, not by simply always living in that rut of doubt.
Faith and doubt is sort of like positive and
It
negative.
is. It
And
is.
when you used the word up there not too long ago
Yeah.
on the board, objectively,
Right. Yes,
it's an attitude.
it is. Yes.
If you have a positive attitude about life, that faith is gonna come through.
Yes.
But when you're negative about everything, you have doubt. And you see
Yes.
people that are so negative, you don't even enjoy being around them because it's just, they just have a terrible attitude about life itself.
Yes. And it's sad. They're in a negative rut. And their life is looking at everything under the sun without God in it. God pulls us up. He's talking about now in chapter 11 and chapter 12, living life under the sun with God. Don't live your life without. This verse is about living life, is what it's about. You trust in God and you move forward. You take risk. You step out of your comfort zone. Sometimes things work, sometimes, when things don't work, you still trust God. That didn't work, but I'm still going to trust God.
But to what she said, you have those negative people that are living in doubt, but the faith of others
Yes.
put to work around those with the doubt can
Yes.
oftentimes bring them out of that
It
doubt or
can.
out of that depression.
It can, yeah. And we all like being around a positive, person like that and things. It's always fascinating to me that when Jesus sits down to have a Bible, here God comes down to earth as Jesus. He sits down to have a Bible study in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 6 about being in the kingdom. And Cedric and I brought this out in our Tuesday night Bible class when we studied this verse, is Jesus spends only this many verses in two places. This is one of two places he spends more verses on one subject than anything else in the Sermon on the Mount, and it's about worry. God knows, Jesus knew when he looked at his audience, the one thing that would interfere with people coming into the kingdom was worrying about what I'm going to eat, what I'm going to drink. In essence, it's worrying too much about life under the sun without God. And what does he do? He tells us, God knows you need these things, and God will provide these things. You seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and these material things will take care of themselves. But Jesus dealt with doubt. It was called worry there. But it's interesting that Jesus knew the one thing that would keep people from becoming fully a Christian, fully in the kingdom, was worry. And that's in the parable of the sower, the third ground. The distractions of the world, choked the seed and did not become fruitful. Anybody else before we go to the next one? Okay. We'll get into the next one. We probably won't be able to finish it because my time's going to be up. Number 5, positive attitude instead of anxiety. Nobody wants anxiety. Try assurance, verses 7 and 8. Verse 7 and 8. Remember, he's talking about our life under the sun and phases of life that we go through. Truly the light is sweet, and it's pleasant for the eyes to behold the sun. But if a man lives many years and rejoices in them all, yet let him remember the dark days, for they will be many, and all that is coming is vanity. Kind of has a positive side to this, kind of has a little bit of a sad side to this. What is he talking about in this verse? What's his message about a positive attitude while you live your lifetime under the sun? What's he telling us? Well, let me ask this. Why does he say light, sun, darkness? Let's look at this part of the proverb. Light, sun, darkness. What's he talking about?
Good and bad days.
Could be good and bad days. Okay. I think that leads into it. What are these? Y'all just got blurry out there. I'm not going to say proud. I was feeling pretty good about myself that for many years, Tanya had to get glasses before me. Let me say it that way. Then I started I couldn't see things up close. And so I had to get readers. And we were going on a trip, I think down to Florida, or down to Alabama to see my mom. And I couldn't see the signs down the road. I thought, something wrong. I might be getting sick or something. So I go into my doctor and he says, oh no, he says, you need glasses. He says, you're getting old. He says, you need glasses, your eyes are getting old. And so when he talks about light, sun, darkness, what's he talking about?
About cycles, I think. To me, I look at it. There's cycles. There's cycles of the day. There's rhythms of life. And one of the rhythms of life is that you're going to have some hard times.
Yes.
There's going to be good days, and there's going to be tough days. There's going to be good years, and there's going to be bad years.
Yes.
Don't forget that.
That's what he's saying.
Look back at that.
So it's kind of a forewarning that, while you're younger, you're young, or you're in your midlife, you got really good eyesight, you see everything clearly. Maybe it's kind of the comparison there, pleasant for the eyes. And maybe it's not just about light, but about the good things we enjoy in life. But remember, now he's telling us to look forward. Remember days of darkness. I think he's talking about what will come. What comes after you need glasses? Eventually you need to get cataract surgery. Eventually you don't see things as bright. Your eyes kind of grow dim. And I think John used a perfect word. I believe he's talking about the cycles of life. So part of life under the sun is that I realize I enjoy the good days that I have, and I have the ability to live them and see them better. But I need to realize that my days are coming that I'm going to be limited. That's just part of the cycle of life, and that we live.
You know, one thing that I get from this too, though, is that remember the days of darkness. I mean, not to necessarily probably despair of them, but we gain some wisdom.
Yes, that's what he's trying to give us. Yes, sir. Yeah, you nailed it. Chapter 3, we're going to close, I think, goes with this. What is Solomon advising about getting older? He's already told us. Chapter 3, we won't read all of it, but we're going to read part of it, beginning in verse 1. He says, to everything there is a season. John used the word seasons or cycles of life. A time for every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die. A time to plant, a time to pluck up what is planted. Come on down to verse 6. A time to gain, a time to lose, a time to keep, a time to throw away. Come down to verse 9 and 11. What profit has the worker from that in which he labors? I have seen the God-given tasks with which the sons of men have been occupied. God, my translation says he, he's talking about God. God has made everything beautiful in its time. So we'll close with that verse. Try assurance in God instead of anxiety. We'll finish the last 5 positive thinking attitudes to have next week. You've been a good class. Thank you.